My name is Eleanor Whitmore, and I am 78 years old. I have lived my entire life in the quiet town of Willow Creek, a place where everyone waves when they pass by and where I once believed family was everything. For decades, I was the heart of my home, cooking Sunday dinners, sewing clothes for my daughter, and keeping the Whitmore name strong while my late husband worked long hours at the mill. I thought I raised my daughter, Marissa, to value kindness, loyalty, and family. She was my only child, the light of my life, the reason I woke up every morning. People used to say, "Eleanor, you and Marissa are inseparable. That girl will take care of you in your old age." And I believed them. I believed her. But last winter, as the snow fell across the neighborhood and my bones ached more than usual, I discovered the truth. Marissa wasn't caring for me. She was slowly taking everything I had built. My pension, my savings, my small farmhouse, even the very roof over my head. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a mistake. It was betrayal, planned in whispers behind closed doors, signed on papers I didn't know I was handing her. And the night I realized it, sitting in my cold kitchen with the smell of burnt cornbread in the oven, I overheard something through the cracked hallway door. It was Marissa's voice. She was laughing. Not the laugh I knew as a child's giggle, but a sharp, cruel laugh. And her words sliced through me like a knife. "She'll be gone soon. Once she's out of the way, everything will finally be mine." I froze. My daughter. My flesh and blood. Plotting my end as if I were nothing more than an obstacle. That was the night my heart broke. But it was also the night I decided something else, something she never expected. I would not go quietly. I would take back what was mine. And Marissa would learn, for the first time in her life, that even an old woman's revenge can burn hotter than fire. When I was a young woman, life was never easy. My husband, Harold, worked 12-hour shifts at the mill, his hands rough and cracked from the machines. Money was always tight, but I didn't mind. We had love, and we had Marissa. She was my miracle child, born after years of prayers and tears when doctors told me I'd never carry a baby. From the moment I held her in my arms, I swore I'd give her everything I never had. I stitched her dresses from old fabric scraps, worked double shifts at the diner, and saved every penny for her future. When Harold passed away from a sudden heart attack, I didn't crumble, I stood taller, because Marissa needed me. I still remember the nights I stayed awake, rocking her through fevers, singing old hymns to chase away her nightmares. I told myself, one day, she'll look back and know how much her mama loved her. And when she grew older, I sacrificed even more. I sold my mother's wedding ring to pay for her college books. I took out loans in my name so she could attend nursing school, even though it meant I'd be paying them off well into my 70s. I worked odd jobs, cleaning houses, babysitting, even scrubbing floors, just to keep her dreams alive. For years, I thought I was watching her grow into the woman I always hoped she'd be. She graduated, moved into a nice home, married a man with ambition. She wore fancy clothes I could never afford, carried handbags with names I couldn't pronounce. She'd smile at me and say, "Mama, I'm doing all this because of you." But slowly, I noticed the shift. The phone calls became shorter. The visits fewer. Every time she came by, her eyes didn't rest on me. They darted around my house, landing on the antique furniture, the land Harold left behind, the small savings I had carefully tucked away. I didn't want to believe it. A mother's heart tries to protect her child, even from the truth. But looking back, I see it clearly now. Marissa wasn't just drifting away. She was calculating. And the cruelest part. I gave her every piece of myself, and she was already planning to take what little I had left. It started with something small. Marissa showed up one Saturday morning, her car shining like new, her perfume too strong for my old farmhouse kitchen. She kissed me on the cheek, sat me down at the table, and spoke in that gentle, sugary voice she used when she wanted something. "Mama," she said, "you shouldn't be worrying about bills anymore. Let me take care of your finances. You've worked hard your whole life, just hand it over to me, and I'll make sure you're comfortable." At first, my heart swelled. I thought maybe this was the moment she would finally return all the love I had poured into her. A daughter looking out for her mother. Isn't that what people in town always said? One day she'll take care of you, Eleanor. But then came the papers. She pulled them from her purse, long documents with tiny words I couldn't quite see without my glasses. She tapped her manicured nail against the lines, smiling. "It's just some legal stuff, Mama. So I can help with the bills, the property taxes, nothing serious." I hesitated. My gut twisted, but she held my hand so warmly, looking me in the eye with that same face I had rocked to sleep decades ago. I told myself I was being silly. This was my daughter. My only child. She wouldn't hurt me. So, I signed. Weeks later, the phone calls from the bank began. My pension checks were being redirected. My savings account looked thinner every time I checked. And one day, when I asked Marissa about it, her sweet voice hardened. "Mama, don't worry about things you don't understand. I'm managing it. You should just relax." Relax. The word stung. Because instead of peace, I felt a deep unease I couldn't shake. I started noticing other things too, like how she never came over without leaving with something. My old silverware set. My late husband's tools. Even the quilt my mother stitched by hand. Each time, she had an excuse: "It's safer with me," or "You don't need it anymore." It was death by 1,000 cuts. Not one act of cruelty, but a steady peeling away of my life, piece by piece. And the worst part? I smiled through it, pretending not to notice, because admitting the truth would mean facing a nightmare no mother ever wants to believe. That her own daughter was betraying her. The day I lost my home was the day I realized how deep her betrayal truly ran. It was a crisp autumn morning, the kind of day when the leaves turn gold and the air smells like cinnamon. I was baking apple pie when a knock rattled the front door. Not Marissa this time. 2 men in suits, holding clipboards. "Mrs. Whitmore?" one of them asked. "Yes," I said, wiping my hands on my apron. "We're here regarding the property transfer. You'll need to vacate within 60 days. I felt the words crash into me like a train. Vacate. Transfer. My heart pounded in my chest. I don't understand. This is my house. My husband built this porch with his bare hands." The man sighed, pointing to the papers. My signature, scrawled in blue ink, stared back at me. The same papers Marissa had placed before me at the kitchen table weeks earlier. That night, when she came over, I begged for an explanation. Tears blurred my vision, my voice cracked as I clutched her arm. "Marissa, please tell me this isn't true. Tell me I'm not losing my home." She pulled away, her eyes cold as stone. "Mama, you don't need this big old house. You can't take care of it anymore. I've already arranged everything. There's a lovely assisted living place on Maple Street. You'll be comfortable there." Comfortable. That word stabbed me deeper than any blade. Comfortable, while she stripped me of the very place where my memories lived, the bedroom where Harold kissed me goodnight, the garden where Marissa once chased fireflies, the kitchen where I taught her how to bake cornbread. I fell to my knees right there in the living room, sobbing into my hands. "How could you, Marissa? I gave you everything." She stood above me, arms crossed, lips pursed in that cruel smirk I hardly recognized. "And now I'm giving you peace of mind. Stop being dramatic. This is what's best for everyone." But I knew the truth. It wasn't about what was best. It was about greed. About power. About a daughter who saw her mother not as blood, not as love, but as a burden standing in the way of her inheritance. That night, as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the weight of betrayal crushed my chest. For the first time in 78 years, I wished I wouldn't wake up. But somewhere deep inside me, a small spark still burned. And that spark whispered, "She has taken everything, but not yet." Not everything. The Maple Street nursing home smelled of bleach and boiled cabbage. The walls were painted a dull beige, and the hallways echoed with the sounds of television's blaring game shows no one was really watching. When Marissa dropped me off, she kissed my cheek and whispered, "It's only temporary, Mama. You'll be safe here." But her eyes told a different story. They sparkled, not with love, but with relief. I sat on the thin mattress of my new room, clutching the quilt I'd managed to sneak out in a trash bag, the only piece of home I had left. My roommate, a frail woman named Ruth, coughed into her pillow, muttering about her son who hadn't visited in months. Days turned into weeks. Meals were served on plastic trays. The nurses were polite but rushed, their smiles tight. I was just another old woman in a long row of forgotten faces. But the worst pain wasn't the loneliness or the bland food. It was the visits. Marissa would sweep in wearing designer coats, her perfume choking the air, her husband trailing behind like a shadow. She'd sit on the edge of my bed, phone in hand, barely looking at me. "You're fine here, Mama. Don't make this harder than it is." One afternoon, I overheard her outside my door, laughing on the phone. "The place practically babysits her. Now I can focus on the house. I might even sell it next spring, get something bigger." Her words hollowed me out. I was no longer a mother in her eyes. I was luggage she'd checked into storage. That night, I cried silently into my quilt, shaking with grief and rage. I thought of Harold, of all the years I had fought to give Marissa the life she wanted. And now here I was, discarded, humiliated, and left to fade away. But as the moonlight spilled through the small window above my bed, something inside me hardened. If she thought I was too old, too weak, too broken to fight back, she was wrong. Because in that sterile little room, with nothing but memories and pain to keep me company, I made myself a promise. I would not die in Maple Street. And Marissa would pay for what she had done. Life at Maple Street was designed to break people down. Soft chairs, slow routines, endless bingo games. But while others surrendered to it, I stayed awake at night, staring at the ceiling, letting my anger fuel me. And slowly, I began to notice things. The staff thought I was just another frail old woman, but I listened. I listened when the nurses complained about their low pay. I listened when the orderlies whispered about patients' families fighting over inheritances. Secrets spilled freely in this place, because no one believed the elderly still had teeth sharp enough to bite back. One afternoon, Ruth, my roommate, leaned close as we folded our laundry. Her hands trembled, but her eyes carried the same bitterness I felt. "My son sold my land without telling me," she whispered. "Don't trust your daughter, Eleanor. They think we're too old to fight." That sentence lit something in me. Too old to fight. Maybe in body, but not in mind. From that day, I began paying closer attention to Marissa whenever she visited. She strutted into the nursing home in high heels, flaunting jewelry I knew she couldn't afford. She bragged about vacations, dinners, and a new Lexus. She even mentioned an investment property, my property, laughing about how easy it had been to get. But pride is a dangerous thing. The more she bragged, the more careless she became. She would leave her purse on my nightstand while she scrolled through her phone. She would drop bank statements, contracts, and receipts, thinking I was too blind or too slow to notice. I noticed everything. I began keeping a notebook, hidden beneath the mattress. Every detail went inside: names, dates, amounts. Every slip of paper she left behind, I copied in shaky but determined handwriting. To everyone else, I was just old Eleanor Whitmore, nodding along, smiling weakly. But in reality, I was building a case. A weapon. A truth strong enough to cut deeper than any knife. And as weeks passed, I found something even more valuable than information. I found allies. There was George, a retired lawyer with a mind as sharp as ever, who still loved the taste of justice. There was Nancy, who had a nephew working at the courthouse. And Ruth, dear Ruth, who knew how to sneak things in and out without staff noticing. The world thought Maple Street was a place for endings. But for me, it became a battlefield training ground. Because every soldier knows, revenge isn't rushed. It's planned. And I was planning mine with the patience of a woman who had nothing left to lose. It began with a phone call. George, the retired lawyer down the hall, had been watching me scribble notes for weeks. One evening after dinner, he leaned in close and said, "Eleanor, if you're serious about this, I still remember a few tricks. But you need proof. Solid proof." That night, as the halls grew quiet and the nurses made their rounds, Ruth pressed something into my hand. A small silver key. "Staff mailbox," she whispered. "People forget what old eyes can see. I noticed your daughter leaves papers in the visitor box sometimes. Thought you might need this." My hands trembled as I clutched the key. It was the first weapon in my arsenal. The next time Marissa visited, she did what she always did, sat by my bed, scrolling on her phone, complaining about her husband's lack of drive. I watched her drop an envelope into the staff box on her way out, too busy reapplying her lipstick to notice me watching. That night, when the halls were dark, I shuffled out of my room with Ruth at my side. The key slid into the mailbox lock, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. Inside was a stack of papers, but one bore Marissa's name. I unfolded it under the dim hallway light, and my blood ran cold. It was a contract. Marissa had listed my farmhouse for sale. Not next year. Not one day. The deal was already in motion. The land Harold had worked for, the home I had built memories in for nearly 8 decades, she was selling it as if it were nothing more than a pair of shoes she'd outgrown. My knees buckled, but Ruth caught my arm. "Don't cry now, Eleanor. Get smart." And so I did. I copied every word, every signature, every number into my notebook. Proof. Real proof. The next morning, I called Nance's nephew at the courthouse. He agreed to meet, curious about an old woman with a story to tell. George coached me on what to say, how to frame it, how to make sure the law would hear me. For the first time in months, I felt alive. My daughter thought she had buried me in Maple Street. But in truth, she had placed me in the one place where I could quietly rebuild my strength. That night, when Marissa returned, smiling as if nothing had happened, I forced myself to smile back. I poured her tea with shaky hands, playing the part of the weak, fragile mother. But deep inside, I held a secret she would never suspect. The war had begun. I could have gone straight to the courthouse with what I had. The proof of her selling my house was strong enough to start a fire. But George's words echoed in my mind. "Don't show your hand too early, Eleanor. If you want to win, let her bury herself first." So I played the role. I was the fragile old woman, nodding along, smiling at her stories, pretending I believed her lies. And while she talked, I listened. And oh, the things she let slip. Over coffee in my sterile little room, Marissa complained about her husband, Trevor. "He's useless, Mama. Doesn't make half as much as I do. He thinks love is enough, but love doesn't buy houses." I bit my tongue to keep from spitting out the truth, that it wasn't her money fueling her lifestyle. It was mine. A week later, she bragged about a business loan she had secured. Only I knew it wasn't a loan. It was my savings account, bled dry. The final blow came one afternoon when she arrived in a rush, her face pale, her hands shaking. She barely noticed me as she whispered into her phone. "Yes, I told the nursing home she's losing memory. If the papers go through, I'll have power of attorney by next month. She won't even be able to sign her own name." I sat frozen, my teacup trembling in my hand. Power of attorney. She wasn't just selling my house. She wanted control of me, my body, my choices, my freedom. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, anger coursing through my veins stronger than the arthritis in my bones. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was theft of my life. The next morning, I marched into George's room, my notebook clutched to my chest. He looked at me with those sharp old eyes and asked, "Well, Eleanor, are you ready?" I nodded. More than ready. She thinks I'm weak. But I'm about to show her just how strong I still am. We began drafting a plan, not just to stop the house sale, but to unravel every lie she had built. And when it was finished, Ruth whispered a prayer over us, her thin hands gripping mine. For the first time in months, I felt something stronger than grief. Hope. But I also knew something else. If Marissa was bold enough to try stealing my life, she was bold enough to play dangerous. And I needed to be ready for the storm she would unleash when she realized her mother wasn't done fighting. The courthouse smelled of dust and old paper, but to me it smelled like freedom. George walked beside me, his cane tapping the floor with each step, while Nance's nephew carried a folder thick with the evidence I had gathered. My notebook, every detail, every lie, every number, was now a weapon in the hands of the law. The clerk glanced at me, eyebrows raised. "Mrs. Whitmore, are you sure you want to do this? It means filing against your own daughter." I swallowed hard. My hands trembled, not from age this time, but from fury. Yes, I said firmly. I want to do this. My daughter took everything from me. Now it's time I take something back. By the time I returned to Maple Street, my plan was already in motion. Court papers were filed. A judge had quietly put a temporary hold on the house sale. And Marissa had no idea. The very next day, she walked into my room, smiling like a cat with cream on its whiskers. She placed a stack of documents on my tray. Mama, good news. These papers will make things easier for both of us. Just sign here, and I'll take care of the rest. Her voice was sweet, but her eyes gave her away, sharp, calculating, hungry. She slid the pen into my hand. For a moment, I almost laughed. Did she really think I was still blind? I looked her straight in the eye, my old fingers wrapping around the pen. Slowly, I scribbled something across the page, deliberately messy, barely legible. Her smile widened, thinking she had won again. But the truth. I hadn't signed my name. I had drawn a single line through the middle of the page. Nothing binding. Nothing legal. Just enough to keep her satisfied a little longer. She left the room humming, clutching the papers, not knowing that as she walked out, the sheriff's office was already preparing a summons with her name on it. That night, I sat by my window, looking out at the stars. My heart pounded, not with fear anymore, but with anticipation. The trap was set. And soon, Marissa would walk straight into it. The courtroom was colder than I expected. The wooden benches creaked as people shifted, whispering about the case they had come to see. Few trials in our little town ever drew a crowd, but word had spread, a daughter accused of robbing her own mother blind. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my quilt folded neatly across my lap. On my right, George adjusted his glasses, and Nance's nephew organized the files with a steady hand. Across the room, Marissa strutted in like she owned the place, heels clicking against the tile. Trevor followed, his face pale, his eyes darting nervously. When Marissa saw me, she smirked. "Really, Mama? You dragged this into court?" She hissed under her breath. I didn't answer. The judge entered, and the room rose. The first hour was all paperwork, deeds, bank transfers, account statements. The judge's expression grew darker with each new piece of evidence. Finally, Nance's nephew presented my notebook, its pages filled with Marissa's lies written in my shaky hand. Mrs. Whitmore documented every withdrawal, every transfer, every signature that was not her own, he said firmly. Marissa laughed, flipping her hair. She's old. She probably doesn't even remember writing that. She's confused half the time. That's when George leaned forward. "With all due respect, Your Honor," he said, voice strong despite his years. "This woman is sharper than any of us in this room. And her daughter underestimated that." Then came the moment I had been waiting for. The judge turned to Marissa. "Mrs. Kane, did you, without your mother's consent, sell her home on Willow Lane?" Marissa's face faltered. She glanced at Trevor, who shook his head, silently urging her to stay quiet. But it was too late. A court officer handed the judge a recording, a voicemail Marissa had left on Trevor's phone, later accidentally forwarded to one of Trevor's co-workers. Her voice filled the room. "Once she's declared incompetent, it's all mine. The house, the money, everything. She won't even know what day it is." Gasps erupted across the courtroom. I sat still, my heart pounding, but my face calm. Marissa's smirk was gone now. She turned pale, her hands trembling as the judge struck the gavel. "Effective immediately," the judge said, "the power of attorney request is denied. The sale of the property is void. Funds are to be returned. And Mrs. Kane, you will face criminal charges for fraud." Marissa's mouth fell open. "Mama, please. I didn't mean." I finally spoke, my voice steady, cold, but carrying the weight of every sleepless night she had caused me. "You didn't just take my house, Marissa. You tried to take my dignity. And that I will never forgive." Trevor put his head in his hands. Marissa was led away, protesting, her voice echoing down the hallway. When it was over, George patted my hand. "You did it, Eleanor." But as we walked out into the sunlight, I shook my head. "No, George." She did it to herself. I just made sure the truth saw daylight. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. Not because my house was saved, or because justice had been served, but because I had taken back what Marissa thought she had stolen forever. My voice, my strength, my power. And as I looked up at the sky, I whispered a quiet promise to Harold. I didn't let her win.